Candyman is a movie about a black dude that not only wants to be the monster, but is totally playing the long game so he can get the white girl at the end.
Hell yeah, dude.
It's like literally like this is just a plot to get the white girl.
It's a very, very long game.
Yeah, man. I mean, shit, he's willing to die for it, Props.
Yep.
Anyway, Candyman apparently offended these... Man, we were watching the features on this, and there's... what's her name? Tananarive Du, a writer, an authoress, and her husband. And they're both black, by the way. And, it's almost like they were grimly determined to hate Candyman, but didn't want to shit on it because, it's a black horror movie still. Yeah. Even though, according to them...
Hashtag black horror.
Yeah, hashtag black horror. Even though, according to them, it's really like a black horror movie for white people. By white people. Like, homie!
Yeah.
I've never seen two people horribly misunderstand a movie so much.
It was impressive. It was impressive that us, two unwashed heathens, understood the movie more than these, educated... academics, I guess.
Yeah, quasi-academics.
Yeah, quasi.
And we're not trying to wax philosophical on them, but homie! What movie did you guys see?
It's true.
Look, it is very true that Bernard Rose is a white guy, and he directed this movie that features the ideas of race and class divide heavily in it. But contrary to what they were going on about, it's not a movie where everything is black and white.
Oh.
For lack of better words. There's a lot of nuance in this picture, and ultimately, it's a type of set dressing that added substance to a story that otherwise was a little bit more barren in its structure. So, it's not a bad thing that there's black people in this, and it's not a bad thing that the projects are here, and it's not a bad thing that Candyman is a quote-unquote bad guy.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. It's not a bad thing that the lead actress is a white chick. No, there's a reason it's happening this way.
Yeah, these homies were hating on that white chick.
Yeah, it's like, all right. What movie are you watching? Yeah. Anyway, in one respect, though, they are right. This movie did make an impression on white audiences because, let's face it, black horror characters are pretty fucking rare. Even nowadays.
I mean, Blackula.
Blackula,
that alone.
Got his own game going on. It's called 2 movies and I'm out. Look, it's just rare to see a black horror character. It's rarer to see a good black horror character. Wow. Because most of the time when we do get a black horror movie,
it's Blackula.
It's from, it's produced at the lowest possible, with the lowest possible budget. AKA it's trash.
Feces.
Yeah. Or Snoop's in it and he can't act for shit.
Homie, Hood of Horror?
Oh, man. Forget that. Bones? Come on, man. So when we get a memorable black horror creation or movie in general, it stands out. And, so that's something of note. These two guys that were super against it, or these two people that were super against it. Also, they were talking about how, I can't get over their chat. I was sitting there in awe.
It was bad, dude.
They were talking about how it was okay for Candyman to be bad because at that point in the cinema, there was people like Wesley Snipes and others that were playing good characters, so there was a balance.
It's like, homie, you can't.
Hold up,
that's
man.
not how life works.
First of all, that's not how life works. Second of all, it's a good thing that there's a black horror villain. How about that?
Yeah.
How about the fact that there was 0 black horror villain? I mean, I'm exaggerating there, obviously.
Especially in a genre like horror in which fans cling to the bad guy.
Yes, exactly. Genre fans love the bad guy, and in this case, the black guy. Yeah, so that's not a bad thing. That means you got representation in the genre that usually shuns black horror villains.
Yeah.
I didn't get what they were going on, man.
Yeah, they were like, it was alright, because Wesley Snipes was doing his thing, and Sidney Poitier was in that classic Sneakers. And I was like, Sneakers?
Sneakers, that movie that everybody loves, aka nobody at all. Yeah, man, so their spiel was that it was okay for Tony Todd to be the bad guy. because there was good guys.
But it was like so condescending. Like, it's okay that he was the black guy.
It was a strange, and that's just, you know what? That's just something that this movie points out. The weird kind of divide that exists between cultures sometimes. Whether it's just because we don't understand each other or because we presupposed about each other a lot of things.
Yeah.
In this case, I feel like they were presuming a lot about this fucking movie. And that's ironic because this movie, one of the themes that we see in this movie is this idea of this divide, I should say, that exists in society because we've demonized, in the case of this movie, each other, which is something, by the way, that these two failed to see. They were just talking about how white people were demonizing black people and seeing in them a certain light. But the fucking whole thrust, the whole reason Candyman's alive in this is basically because the black community have made him a representation of their fear of white people. So I don't understand what the fuck. What? We're having performance issues. That's what she said.
That was weird.
I don't know if that's going to affect what came out on screen, but according to the computer, we were having performance issues. Yeah. That or was just being condescending of our performance in bed.
Yeah, man.
Our performance in bed.
Homie? 69ing?
Yeah, totally. But yeah, man, this was if you have this particular Blu-ray, the feature is called, what is it called, man? Urban Legend, Rapping Candyman, and I don't know what they were getting at. We actually had to stop watching.
Yeah.
Because we were like I was waiting for their point.
Yeah, it's like, logically, I was like, this has to lead somewhere, right? They must have planned this beforehand.
Nope.
Or at the very least talked about it beforehand. But when you're looking at it, it's clear the chick hadn't seen Candyman in about like 20 years.
The dude was trying to compromise. He knew that he was like trying to not say too many bad things. And he was clearly like, she's going way over. So I'm going to try to keep it in the middle and not alienate an entire race myself. But, it's weird. It's weird. But it just goes to show how relevant the topics that this movie brings up are. That, people are still kind of at odds about race in this entire nation. And that's interesting because that really didn't have anything to do with the original story as it was. Clive Barker's The Forbidden was more, well, first of all, it was a smaller story that wouldn't even cover the breadth of a fucking movie, but it was more of a woman obsessed and a woman that discovers something in a world that she's not familiar with. In this case, a social divide. So Bernard Rose, the director of this, felt it prescient to transport that story, which was originally set in London and Liverpool, to be precise, to an American setting, and he put it smack dab in Chicago, which at the time and to this day, is kind of a hotbed of racial divide, which is one of those moves that cemented this adaptation as a standout piece at the moment. It's something that everybody talks about. It's one of the big reasons this movie has stood the test of time, because subjects like that, unfortunately, are always at the forefront of American thought.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, racial issues are a problem everywhere, basically. But America has a fucking issue with it, like bad.
Some thinly veiled ass racism.
Yeah, everywhere.
Very appropriate for those two black people.
Yeah, what the fuck,
damn,
man?
homie.
And that's a fact. Anybody can be racist, black, white, brown, whatever. Mm-hmm. Anybody. It's just that setting it in this place, in this case Chicago, and the projects of Cabrini Green, and making Candyman the projection of an entire people's fear. Really, really, really did wonders for the story, to make it something else, to make it special, to make it rich. And then also opened the door for one of the unsung greats in a lot of ways to come in and step into the weird plaid pants of the Candyman. Tony Todd, it goes without saying, it makes quite the impression. Just to show you how much of an impression he makes, it's really fascinating to see how little screen time he has in this.
Yeah.
But he makes such a big impression that it's almost like something you forget until you revisit it, and you're like, oh wow, that's right.
It's like when Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you watch
exactly.
Beetlejuice and like an hour in, he's still not in there. But somehow you remember him being like in every frame of the movie.
Yeah, he's just this like very larger than life character, and then what I mean, Beetlejuice, of course,
Yeah,
you say
yeah.
that because you know he's so comically zany and stuff. But I guess a more appropriate,
It's just characters that stand out. You know?
yeah, a more appropriate comparison would be like the standard old school monsters in Hammer or Universal movies, and that's what Candyman feels like. And this is especially noteworthy given the times. We had just come out of the 80s, which were an era of success for horror, and I know there's a lot of fans of that, myself included, but a lot of people shut themselves into that microcosm of horror and they were just about the blood, guts, and the crazy effects and all that stuff. Long forgotten was this era where we took time to tell a story, and the villain was literally rarely seen on screen, and Candyman landed smack dab right as we were leaving that era, and it really stood virtually alone as a movie of that type, because what followed after that was just a resurgence of the slasher genre. So in a different form, mind you, but still very much out there and in your face. So Candyman stood on its own for a long, long while, and that's another reason I think it is so well remembered and regarded, on top of the aforementioned things. Of course, we have the locations, the music really stands out. Philip Glass is, of course, a composer of renown. He famously did not want to do this because he hates horror movies.
Damn, homie.
But he was given the script to this, and I guess a talking to by Bernard Rose, the director, and lo and behold, he actually said, "I'm going to do this," and he's never done anything like that again, and I suppose he never will. But that's kind of like one of those things that just you can chalk up something special about this movie that made someone that was obstinately against the genre to just be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Because there is something there. And there is. Indeed, there is. A Candyman comes off as ultimately this sympathetic anti-hero, which I will give that to these guys that were babbling on incoherently in this feature here, that again I can't fathom that feature exists. But he is an anti-hero in the sense that he has taken on a villainous persona, but he is an empathetic villain in the sense that we know from whence he came, and then the circumstances that led to his creation, and the very fact that he went through the things he went through kind of justifies, especially in genre fans' minds, his existence being through the continued death of those around him.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, he represents that continuing divide, that fear of integration, that fear of reaching out to your fellow man that just happens to be another color. He kind of serves as a ghostly representation in that, because in his life, he was somebody that reached out across that divide and, got creatively lynched, for lack of better words. It was a lynching, but it like with bees. Anyway,
bee lynch.
I mean, bee lynch. So
Hashtag bee lynch.
There was there's definitely this gray area that he lurks in, and that's why there is an appeal to him. That's why you can't hate the guy. That's why he takes on that anti-hero role. That's why you kind of want him to come out on top. And the fact that he's also kind of a romanticized character,
Yeah.
like
Kind of interesting.
yeah, Dracula was very famously romanticized as time passed, whereas at the beginning of Dracula's inception, he was an outright villain. As time passed, he became softer. He became literally romanticized to the point where, there was a romantic interest in play. Candyman here comes out the gate that way, something that did not exist in the story at all. Here he comes out the gate that way. he's got this allure to him. There's almost like he manages to ensorcel uh, uh, Virginia Madsen's Helen character here by merely speaking to her, and yeah, it's a strange and unique quality for this type of villain. Hell, I mean, the villain alone is a unique villain. I mean, name another character that compares to Candyman. He stands out in that way too.
It's kind of interesting because it takes a lot of stuff that he's, it's not a particularly unique character when it comes to. There's the hook killer guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we've seen in so many things, but they make him interesting and unique for the movie and for what he is. You know what I mean? Like what he actually is, instead of just like this stereotypical hook killer guy.
And I think that's one of the big hooks to the movie.
Oh, shit.
Is that it does ground itself in the urban legend, I guess, allure that permeates our society the world over, really. I mean, who doesn't know about an urban legend? And they're all kind of just a variation of the same story in some way.
Which is interesting because he's kind of just like this melting pot of different urban legends.
Yeah, really he is. And that is enough to hook in any viewer, which, again, seems to be something these two people that were chattering did not understand. But that's like an open invitation to anybody to come into this movie. We've all heard some story, some variation of the stories here. So for this woman to be obsessed enough to go out and search for something like this is something that we can actually, imagine or want to see more of. And I think what's interesting is to see how heavily oriented towards a story the movie is through that. Instead of going straight to the Candyman from the get-go, it's actually a pretty good long time until we actually first see the Candyman. But while a lesser movie could fail horribly at doing that, this one manages, at least I think so, in my opinion, to keep you interested throughout, because not only the possibility that here we're playing with somebody that may or may not just be imagining things, but again, I think it's the fact that we have a woman going into a place that she does not understand, where she's completely in an alien landscape, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's something that these people had. Oh, that sounds pretty racist. These two individuals had a problem with, like that they show the projects in this place as like this, like, oh, look at those people, look at those animals and shit. But I do think that there is a little bit of that, in the beginning when she first gets there and gets hollered at, I guess. But there is a character that kind of skirts around that, which is the girl with the kid.
Yeah.
Even in a very visual way, like there's the hallway looks like ass, and then you go into her house and it's a very normal house and it's very, the girl just trying to do her thing. So it shows you both sides. So that's just another thing that I want to shit on these people for.
Yeah, I found it really fucking weird.
What the hell?
They were really hung up. And again, like, that's actually what they said. That they were saying that the movie was saying about black people. Look at these animals. They live like animals.
Yeah.
Like, no.
They like living like that.
They like that.
Yeah,
like,
I was like, what?
The movie never says that.
No.
In fact, the movie, if anything, showing the projects this way kind of was a little tame, to be honest with you. Look, I was in Chicago for a while, and because I'm a Candy fan, I actually asked, and mind you, when I went, Cabrini was either being taken down or going through some sort of renovation thing. I'm not sure. I didn't get the 100% information on that, but I actually asked the cab driver to drive us by there, and he refused to go there. And that was a black guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He was like, no, man, no, we're not going there. You don't want to go there. Not even driving by. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a criticism to show some facet of realism. You know what I'm saying? And the fact of the matter is that the movie makes it pretty clear, like you said, that there's all types of people there.
Yeah.
Good and bad. And if anything, the bad and the good reflect Candyman himself. You know?
Yeah.
There's a bad quality to him, and then there's a good quality to him.
There is people who freaking wallow in the filth, you know, like that little gang that they had, rip off Candyman.
Right.
And there's people who are just there
trying
because,
to get
because they have to be, basically.
Yeah, and ultimately that's one of the big themes in the movie, this idea that the class and racial divide is more is this trap that has been instilled in society, and it's almost inescapable.
The ghetto trap.
Yeah, you know, so you know, it's again because a white person points it out, in this case Bernard Rose, doesn't make it a criticism. It's actually like, hey, look, this is something we should be aware of, you know. If Ice Cube can write a whole song about it, why can't a white person say it and say it in a way that's like, hey, open up your mind?
There's even a more like subtle way of that they tackle that, in that the chick where she lives was meant to be a ghetto, you know, and or projects, and you know, there's that little bit of extra, you know, more subtle context in there, you know, and in that line that she's talking about what it was meant to be, but it ended up not being that, and they just freaking sold it as something else, you know. There's a lot there. These people were just kind of ignored, you know.
Yeah, then there is a lot of like you say, there is a lot of subtlety in the movie. It's less brazen than some movies nowadays, and this is not a criticism of these movies. We actually really love Get Out, but it's a little bit more forward in what it's trying to say.
Yeah.
It does it expertly, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more forward. Whereas Candyman, it says what it has to say as a frame for what's going on, but it never stops being a monster movie.
Yeah.
Ultimately, by the end of the picture, you went and saw a monster movie that just happened to be set in the backdrop of these very serious and realistic societal issues that plague America to this very day. So that in itself is kind of admirable, because nowadays, right now, we live, well, first of all, in a racial hellhole, because everybody's at each other's throats over just the simplest thing. You know, like, you could be like the least racist person, but then all of a sudden you're racist because you said one little thing wrong or you wore the wrong thing. We live in a fucking idiotic time in terms of race. Somehow, instead of getting better, we got worse. I don't know how that happens, but I guess. But on top of that, we also live in an era of horror cinema where elevated horror, as they're calling it now, is kind of like becoming, I wouldn't say the status quo, but it's definitely getting a lot more attention, i.e. The Witch and Midsummer and etc. You know, really could put like A24's entire fucking, you know, output there. There is now, you know, Get Out. There is now a lot more substance to horror than there ever was before. Candyman came out in a time where that was like virtually non-existent. So you could almost call it an elevated horror movie of its time. You know, it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and that's another way. But to its credit, it does it, like you say, in a much more subtle way. It's not saying this is the point. Like, long and short, it's still a monster movie, but it just happens to have this accoutrement to it.
You could totally see this movie and not get any of what it's trying to say. Just see it as a monster movie, and still enjoy it. You know what I mean? Which is cool. Sometimes you go to see a movie and it's all about the point, and you're like, stinky.
Yeah. Sometimes the point can hurt a movie, and thankfully this is not what happens with this movie, like ever, really. You know, in fact, the point is so understated at times that you kind of forget that it's even there. Really, you know what I'm saying?
It's just the environment, basically.
Yeah, it really is. So credit to that. Anyway, give me something, man, that you hate or love about it.
I gotta give mad kudos to my boy Tony Tranny Todd. For a dude that's in it for like 3 milliseconds, he's pretty damn great. And that voice.
Yeah. Talk about presence, man.
And them bees.
Yeah. Tony Tranny Todd loves trannies. No hate.
He's like, I don't want to make the comparison, but he's kind of like that Pinhead-like figure, you know? He's this big presence with a voice who's in there for like a second.
And you have to
you remember him because he's so like good, you know?
Mm-hmm. You have to keep in mind that he was filling shoes that were shiny, by the way.
Yep.
Filling shoes that really were just created by Bernard Rose. You know what I'm saying? The Candyman in the story is this strange yellow-skinned patchwork coat-wearing creature, you know, or basically humanoid-like creature. Definitely not this kind of like classy, almost indelible presence that Tony Todd gives off. You know, there's just something about him that sticks to you like honey, I guess.
Yeah.
On top of being a visually impressive cat, you know, he's a tall guy. I mean, I'm not saying he's ugly now, but he was a very handsome guy at the time. He's a little less handsome now. He's just like an old guy now, old black man. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia joke in case somebody's like, "Oh God, what did he just say?"
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, you know, he's this very imposing, deep, throaty voice. You know,
he's slow in his movement.
Yeah, methodical in you know, just everything about him.
Bees.
The bees. Yeah, and the aesthetic of Candyman himself, you know, is just unique. You know, we have first of all plaid pants that he can make plaid pants work.
That's the thing. I want to talk about his getup. This is a getup that only the coolest mofo can make work.
There's some clothes that only black people can make work.
Yeah.
And Candyman's clothes is one of them.
Like, what is that coat, homie? The puffy coat, and then you got the weird plaid pants and the shiny feet and the scarf.
And the big old scarf.
You know, I mean, it makes sense to the character, but when you look at it, you're like, that's not cool. But when you see it on Tony Tranny Todd, you're like, hell yeah!
It's super cool.
Super cool, dude. I want to wear that, and then you put it on, and you're like, yeah, this is bad.
Yeah, I tried the scarf. It didn't work.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I tried the bees. My weenie was obliterated.
It's pretty interesting, man. You know, there's a point where he reveals his chest, and it's just a bed of bees and some ribs.
Yeah.
Because he likes ribs.
Hell yeah.
No, you know, rib cage and some bees in there. But also,
you know, where he keeps his chilies.
Yeah. Also, you know, he opens his mouth and all these bees pour out.
Yeah, homie, did freaking Tony suck on bees?
Yeah, he totally sucked on real bees, man.
Damn, home.
He actually got paid a bonus every time a bee stung him, so you know he was lying about that.
Hell yeah.
24/7, like, yo, I just got stung bad. Give me a bit more cheddar.
Yeah, no shit.
So, yeah, man, just a fucking impressive looking horror icon.
Yeah.
Played by, you know, it's like Robert Englund fits like a glove. Did not intend that when it comes to Freddy. And to see anybody play Freddy,
you're like, oh man,
it just doesn't feel right, you know, because he's like the perfect guy to play him. Well, you know, do that times 10 with Tony Todd. It's like almost impossible to imagine anybody else playing Candyman until you see part 3 and you're like, man, he shouldn't have played Candyman in this. Stinky. Also, they do a really good job of hiding the fact that I don't understand movies and not being able to get the fake hand down right, you know?
Yeah.
Like Carl Weathers and Happy Gilmore, mind you, it's Happy Gilmore, so I'm pretty sure they were like, it's okay if his arm looks super long, but his arm's like fucking like 10 feet long.
That's just the thing.
Yeah. Candyman's got this hook, and they made this hook an actually long hook.
Yeah.
So the length doesn't look, you know, horrid. And Bernard Rose actually knew how to shoot it so that you don't get these shots where, you know, his arm is extended in such a way
being cut.
Yeah,
it's still like this long.
Yeah, exactly. So you never see that in this movie. It actually always is shot very well. Candyman 3, whoop, stinky, 50-foot long arm, man.
Damn.
Like, dude, come on, at least shoot the arm right.
It's like that guy at the end of RoboCop.
Yeah, for real, man.
2 hooks.
Damn. But yeah, they do a really good job with that. And about that, the direction in this is, I don't know, man. I don't know how to describe it. It creates a certain atmosphere. It's not your typical horror atmosphere.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of like throwbacky elements in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a lot of eye shots.
Right.
And the way they shoot like women reacting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do that classic little like light a lot.
Right.
There's a lot of these like old timey techniques shown. But it's not like an old movie, you know. It's not completely like it's thrown into all these kind of. It's very unique, very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely has a postmodern feel, and yet retains a lot of that classicism when it comes to horror, which I think again is one of those things that contributes to the Candyman himself standing out as kind of both a modern hero, a modern villain, and he has that air of that old school respectability, you know. So super cool.
I do find, and this is not something that I'm shitting on, but it is something that at first comes off a little weird. Mind you, in a good way, because it kind of throws you off. You know, when you're watching a movie, there is like suddenly a lot of gore, and it comes at a very good time. You know, when she wakes up in the thing, and it's kind of, you're kind of in her
point of view.
Yeah, so it becomes off as like, damn, homie, what's going on? Ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, it does go a little like sometimes, you know, did it go get weird again?
I don't know what happened. I just saw a flash on the screen.
Yeah, me too.
The Candyman's here.
Yeah, you know when that guy gets raped by the freaking hook.
Yeah,
that was a little like, all right, homie.
That's we did see the unrated director's cut, which literally just has microseconds added to it, and it's during that scene.
Oh yeah, is that why it was so fuzzy? Also.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. I don't have problem with the kind of like at times very violent stuff that it shows, but apparently these people did. What's your take on that?
Yeah, he's referring to these academics that were endlessly chattering
hating
like
about
us,
everything.
only like completely misconstruing everything.
Yes.
But the violence in this is rather sudden. I do think it does come at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
The first time we see it is that time when the Candyman first makes himself present, or known, I should say, to Helen.
Which is a long time into the movie.
Yeah, and he basically tells her that because of her investigations, because she accused an actual person, an actual living human being, of being the reason behind the Candyman killings, that he must reassert his presence, his legend, so that he must remain alive. And to do that, he throws her into the midst of violent chaos, so that he can play the long game to get her.
It was a very good use of sudden violence.
Yeah, the sudden violence works. It's shocking, and you know what? As sudden and as visceral as it is, really, if you think about it,
it's just like blood on someone.
It's just blood on a person, and really, with the exception of the evisceration scene with the psychologist, which in the theatrical cut is trimmed.
Yeah.
And you see a severed dog head. With the exception of those two scenes,
on the little kid, I guess.
Yeah. The violence is rather subdued. It's just that it does come off as like abrupt.
Yeah.
But it's apparently Bernard Rose is not completely content with that. He feels that it goes against what he was setting up there. But I think it works very well to cement how the people in this world think about the Candyman and why they fear him.
Yeah.
If we didn't see the results of that, we wouldn't really get why someone as cool as Candyman would be feared so much.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, he's feared because he kills, and he kills violently.
Yeah.
So I think it does. I think it's very appropriate. And I think it's actually pretty subdued, given that. I just think it seems more than it is, because the whole film is on a higher level than your standard gore fest.
I think it is that, and I think it's more that they give more like grotesque descriptions of what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that when you actually see it, it's just like a kid on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But the description leading up to it is like so grotesque that you're like, damn, homie, when you see it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's something to really throw some laurels at, because this movie does a lot of that.
Yeah.
It actually creates a fabric of believability about the Candyman and his legend or I should say, a fear by just telling you things rather than showing you things. And sometimes you want to see those things because the morbid curiosity in all of us wants to see things. Like, I know when I was a kid, this sounds horrible, but I love the Candyman. Don't get me wrong. This is not what I'm trying to say. I wanted to see what they did to him because the morbid curiosity made me want to see that. And it made me, in my mind, justify his violence even more. Of course, now I'd be like, come on, man, don't. But they do show you that in part
Tony
2.
alone.
They do show you that scene in part 2. And honestly, I kind of think it's the best scene in part 2. But it's
Tony.
unnecessary in part 1.
Yeah.
And really, part 2 is unnecessary. And definitely part 3 is unnecessary. But the point is,
I do.
like you say, it's amazing what they can achieve just by saying things versus showing you things, which goes back to that old school feeling to begin with. Yeah.
The one scene that I would have a problem with, not even a problem, just like, trim that shit, is that guy getting hook raped.
The psychologist?
Yeah, in the director's cut.
Yeah.
It's like, damn,
totally getting hook banged.
That was like the one bit where it came off a little too much, Like he was like having a little too much fun with that hook, Tony. But apparently, it's not in the regular cut, so I can't even show
Yeah,
that.
it is.
Or it's shorter,
So,
that is the one bit where it came off as a little much, but even then, it's nitpicky.
So yeah, overall, Candyman comes off as kind of like a higher form of the art, especially given its time when it came out in the early 90s. Not a lot of fucking horror movies were interested in making something with depth and that had an ability to, kind of rein itself back and breathe. They just weren't interested in that back then. So this stood out, and it still holds up incredibly well because of that and because of all the other aforementioned reasons that we've seen. I don't find a lot of faults in this movie. If we're going to be nitpicky, I mean, there's a few effects that aren't 100%, but they're so briefly shot that, like, I'll give you a great example at the end. I guess spoiler if you haven't seen the movie. When Helen is coming out of the pyre, it's very clearly a guy wearing a wig.
That wig was bad.
That wig was totally granny wig from a 90s skit show.
It was a bad wig. That being said, there were some shots in that sequence that were like, damn, that's a risky burn.
Yeah, Candyman himself being in the fire. Yeah. There was some really good stuff. So yeah, but they're so brief that you don't really, give a shit.
And her grody head was gross.
Yeah, it was grody. There are 2 sequels to this movie. Part 2 is called Farewell to the Flesh. And though it is a fine sequel, I really have no big issues with it. It made the mistake of kind of like throwing away the ending of this movie. Which, granted, I'm not too sure anybody would have wanted to see a Helen-centric movie. But really, it just goes to show that this movie should have stayed, at part 1, and that's it. But there are some interesting things in the sequel, and the idea of the passage of an urban legend not being restricted to a certain space is explored pretty well. It's an interesting movie, and it's it's directed by Bill Condon, who is a very capable director. So if you're interested, that's something you might want to explore. Do stay away from part 3, Day of the Dead, which the acting alone is enough for you to go, shoot me in the friggin' face. But then, they just transplanted to the Latin American community.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not wanting to sound like these 2 dorks that just completely didn't get the movie, apparently, in this special feature. But that movie was like, come on, man.
Dul Sombre?
Nobody acts that way.
Mm.
It's just stupid. It's a stupid movie that had no purpose. Wasn't even trying to be good. It was just trying to cash in. Part 3, throw it in the trash. However, we are getting a new Candyman movie that is being, people are being kind of, they're kind of like avoiding admitting that it's a sequel, but it's pretty clear that it's a sequel. I think they're doing that because there's two very obvious elements that even if you've seen the movie and you see the trailer, you're like, did I just see the whole movie here?
A little bit, yeah.
Is there going to be more to this? I
hope
hope there is.
I hope so.
But even if not, I mean, I could see where that's going, and that would be interesting too. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know how that's going to pan out. I do know that we have one great horror movie here, so that's all that really matters. And it stands on its own. So if it ends up sucking total donkeys, it's not going to affect this at all. So Candyman, super cool. Let's get final thoughts, final rating. Give it to me.
Tony Tranny Todd is my boy. This little music was pretty rad. Those people sucked in the bonus features.
I can't believe that fucking feature,
It was
dude.
impressively bad.
Like, serious?
And we were like doubting ourselves, like, is it us?
Yeah.
And it reached a point where we just had to be like, bullshit! Movie's pretty rad though. Interesting mix of like feels. I just can't give enough props to Tony, dude. Tony is like rad.
Yeah.
Even if this movie had sucked major, massive BBCs, Tony would have been rad.
Yep, definitely.
That voice,
Presents.
he was
Them pants.
damn the band, dude.
That long game.
Hell yeah, long
And
arm.
he didn't even get the long arm of the law. He didn't even get that tang in the end. That's the sad
damn,
part.
homie.
Anyway.
Got that grody head.
Apparently he will in the fucking new one because that's pretty obvious from the trailer. Anyway. This trailer, dude, just told me the whole story.
It was the whole movie, dude. I'm
will
hoping,
grant
I'm hoping that it's like a ruse, like for all the people who have seen it, they'll think that, and then you'll be totally ass blasting.
I hope
like
so.
a hook to the ass.
But anyway, so you were saying?
I'm gonna give it like a 10er, dude.
Yeah. This is definitely in my top. I don't know, man. I'm gonna say it. It's probably in my top 10 horror movies of all time.
Damn, homie.
It may be in my top 20. I don't know. I feel like I need to revise my list because there's been so many good movies that come out recently. Hashtag, it's okay to admit new movies are good, guys. That's a fucking thing still, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Anyway, I love this movie, man. I really love this movie. It stands the test of time. It tackles issues that unfortunately are part of our problem, but never lets that stifle the fact that at the end of the day, this is just a cool-ass monster movie that has a lot of restraint and is more interested in telling a story in the right way rather than just splashing the screen with blood. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and there's a time and place for that, but I'm glad that Candyman isn't that. I'm glad that it is what it is, and what it is a totally dope-ass flick that deserves to be hashtag black horror, probably #1 spot, maybe.
Oh shit,
maybe,
number
maybe,
one?
Maybe.
Tony
I don't know.
Tranny Todd.
I'm saying maybe, because Tony is like super badass in this role.
Yeah, he's definitely top 3. Top probably though. He's probably the top black horror icon, dude. Like, can you think of another black horror icon?
I mean, there's Mr. Sims. He's pretty freaking dope, dude.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah,
this
Tony is better.
Candyman's such a better character. Mr. Sims we just love because he's pretty fucking funny and awesome. But at the end of the day, he's the devil, literally. And he's got a shitty CGI tongue.
It's from Tales in the Hood, in case you're wondering.
But yeah, I mean, I'd venture to say, easily Candyman is the top black horror icon.
Hell yeah.
Definitely better than Blackula. Come on, man.
Yeah, who cares about Blackula?
Blackula one's pretty good.
I haven't seen Blackula. I just assumed it sucked because they literally just took Dracula and black and mixed it.
Well, look, I'm saying it's pretty good. What I'm really saying is it's a important movie in terms of black horror.
Hashtag black horror?
But it's not really good, if we're going to be honest. You know what I'm saying? It's not really good. And, it's also an exploitation movie or blaxploitation movie. But we've seen far better blaxploitation movies than that. So it's really just a mediocre movie, Blackula is. But the idea I love.
It's pretty great.
You know what I'm saying? I'm all for a new Blackula. with Jordan Peele
As
and why did I forget his name? Because he's totally been overshadowed by Keegan Michael Key.
Yeah.
As either or Blackula or Funkenstein.
I was about to say,
bring that back.
We need a Frankenstein remake by Jordan Peele playing Funkenstein.
Yeah, Funkenstein was the greatest.
For all y'all, damn homie, did it again.
Yeah.
For all y'all Jordan Peele haters, because that's a thing now.
Yeah.
Go back and watch Funkenstein, and you'll instantly love him again. If you don't,
how can you hate Funkenstein?
Yeah, if you don't like Funkenstein, you need to be punched in the nuts.
The gonads. I'll bet you these two jerks would have hated Funkenstein.
Hell yeah, dude. They would have hated Funkenstein.
What was up with these guys, man?
No, they're just straight up hating.
Clearly haven't seen Candyman in like 10 years. Anyway, yeah, man, I'll give it a fucking 10.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Check out Candyman if you haven't already. I hope you have, because we totally like didn't even bother with anything but talking about stuff.
Spoiler alert.
Latest. Anyway, this is a movie.
I did it again.
What is that?
We're gonna have to watch this video back.
Oh yeah. Anyway, hit like, share, subscribe, with those notification buttons, cause we're out.